Okay, if you want to go ahead and start.
All right. Good evening. This is Terry Goddard. I'd like to thank you so much for joining in tonight's telephone town hall. We're going to wait just a minute. I hope you'll hang on because we have a few more folks calling in. But we'll get rolling in about 60 seconds. And just a little background. This town hall tonight is going to focus on voting and voting rights, especially rights for independent voters, and how the Arizona voting and election system could be made better. We're also going to talk, if folks are interested, in dark money and the role that's played really for the first time here in the 2014 election cycle. So we've got lots of good information, in case I forget to mention it later on the website for my campaign for Secretary of State. It's terrygoddard.com, and I'm going to hopefully refer to that a couple of times if questions get very technical rather than waste time, getting into the details. I'm going to suggest that folks go to the website and get information. But this town hall, and let me really emphasize this, is for you. It's for you to ask questions, to make suggestions, to just have to punch 0 on your dial, and you can ask a question, make a suggestion, and we'll get to as many people as we possibly can. That's my goal tonight. I hope that's something that you're really interested in, and we're going to find ways together that Arizona elections can be less confusing. I know they're confusing now, more straightforward, and involve more people than they do today. We've got so many voters, especially independent and moderate voters, who are not part of the process, who've decided no, they're not going to do it because the situation is just too out of control. And I believe that the Chief Elections Officer, the Secretary of State, can do a lot to keep that from happening and to restore people's confidence. But first, we've got to straighten out some of the bugs in the system, and I want to talk about those tonight. And I want your help and participation. Again, to ask a question, to offer a suggestion, all you have to do is hit 0 on your pad, and we'll get going in just a second. I'm frankly filling a little time here, and I apologize for that, so that we can be sure and get interested people on the call. And there's some more calling in right now. And let me just take a deep breath, and we will get started. So, again, for those of you already on the line, thank you so much. For those who've just joined us, this is Terry Goddard speaking. This is a telephone town hall this evening about voting and voting rights. We've got almost 1,000 people already participating, and I want to thank you so much for caring about Arizona elections and participating tonight. We'll focus on people's suggestions and questions, but let me just say a little about myself. I had the privilege of serving as Arizona's Attorney General from 2003 to 2011, and my focus then was protecting Arizona consumers from some of the sharks and knaves that are out there. Today, I'm a candidate for Secretary of State, and that's because I believe very strongly that the Chief Elections Officer in Arizona, that's the Secretary of State's position, can do a much better job of helping Arizona voters, helping people that are involved get more a part of our system. And I would like to have your questions, have your suggestions, but first I'd like to ask you a question. This is an opportunity for two-way communication. And here's the question. I'd like to know who's on the call in terms of what your political affiliation is. If you're an independent, and you can do this on your telephone, if you're an independent, please punch 1. If you're a Republican, 2. If you're a Democrat, 3. Or if you're an other, just hit 4. In other words, again, independent 1, Republican 2, Democrat 3, and other 4. That'll just give us a rough idea of what folks, the 1,000 or more that are involved in this call, are lined up on in terms of their party affiliation or non-party affiliation, just so that we know where you all are coming from. And I'm getting the numbers right now. Thank you so much for pressing your phone numbers. And if you've got a question you're already ready to ask, please hit 0 on your phone. But we're getting in our numbers. Let me just tell you how it's turning out. In this call tonight, we've got 60% independents, 12% Democrats. 12% Republicans, 17% Democrats, 10% unaffiliated. In other words, another type. It could be libertarian or it could be any of a number of other parties or just not affiliated. So that gives us a great start. 60% of everybody on this call are independents. And let me focus first on independent voters, because I'm really concerned that independent voters, who are now the largest group of voters in the state of Arizona, they're number one, but they're seriously discriminated against in the way they are able to participate in the system. Let me give you one quick example. If you want to run for office in the state of Arizona statewide, and you're a Republican, you need about 7,000 signatures on your petitions. If you're a Democrat, you need about 6,800. If you're an independent, you need 33,000 signatures. That's the law in the state of Arizona right now. I think that's awful and it needs to be changed, but it gives you an idea how the system is not working very well. And again, if you've got a question or comment, press 0 on your phone. But that's one example. Another one is how hard it is to get a mail ballot. Now, the mail ballot deadline is over, so hopefully all of you who are voting by mail already have your ballots. But an independent, and many independents don't know this, can vote either a Republican or a Democrat, or if there's a primary on the Libertarian side, they can vote in that party. But they got to pick a party ballot, and I know many people don't like to do that. But if you want to participate in Arizona governance, especially in the legislative races, you need to vote in the primary, because of all the legislative districts, only a few are competitive in the general election. So I hope more independents will be involved in the primary, and I'm really glad to see that the numbers have increased dramatically. We already are more than double the number of independents that have asked for mail-in ballots than they were 2 years ago in the 2012 election. But 2 years ago, the numbers was very bad. It was 7.8% of all independents participated in the primary. And I think we need to inquire about why that is and make sure that that never happens again, because Arizona politics, I believe, has taken a hit because so many moderates, so many intelligent voters have just walked away. So let me just go on to one other topic that I'd like to put on the table, and then we'll get to your questions. And that's dark money. As you may know, dark money has been in the news recently. There's literally millions, over $5 million is projected to be spent in this primary. And I'd like to ask you one more question before we get into the thorough discussion, and that is your opinion of dark money. If you would be kind enough to say by punching, this is the question. Let me define it first. Dark money is anonymous contributions where you don't know who's making the contribution to a political candidate. Often it's corporate money, and it's used to influence votes, to buy advertising in the election. And I'd just like you to punch your phone again, one more time. If you think dark money is a problem in Arizona, or do you think it's not, or if you're unsure? 1, if it's a problem, 2, if you don't think it is, and 3, if you're unsure about what the results should be. And we're getting results in right now. This is sort of like Election Night Central. I'll report in just a second when I see what the answer is. Well, this is exciting. Right now, the response we have is 78% think it's a problem. I agree with you. 5% it's not, and 17% unsure. So let me go straight to a question so that we can involve as many people tonight as absolutely possible. Alex in Phoenix.
My question is dark money a partisan issue? Because it seems like only Republicans have dark money donors.
Well, that's a great question. No, it's not partisan. I think it's an equal opportunity offender, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of dark money. I'm fighting very hard. In fact, I have a petition right now on my website, terrygoddard.com, which asks people to sign up in opposition to dark money. Right now, you see it in the Republican side, Republicans being attacked by dark money because there's so many contests in the primary election on the Republican side, much fewer on the Democratic side, so there hasn't been as many, ads being put on TV that you have to watch every day. But it's not a partisan program. And in fact, I was talking this morning with a statewide Republican candidate who is the victim of a dark money attack. And is thinking about bringing a lawsuit against the people that he believes are behind it. So it's a serious problem, I think, for everybody in Arizona, and based on the 78% that answered number 1, you agree. But let's figure out what to do about it, because dark money is there because an awful lot of people feel that they want to keep their contribution secret. They don't want you or me to know who's supporting a particular candidate. Often these are corporate interests who are afraid their shareholders or their customers might think badly of them because they're doing a particularly they're sponsoring a political attack. But let's go to the next question. Mark in Tucson. Hello.
Hi, I was wondering, I'm not sure if this falls under your purview as Secretary of State, but the majority of Americans vote Democratic for the House of Representatives, but the majority of the House of Representatives is Republican thanks to gerrymandering. Is there anything that can be done about that?
Well, it's a good question. In Arizona, you're focused on Arizona or the country? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Well, in Arizona, I live in Tucson, and I'm in a district that's very much up for grabs because across the road from me, it's an extremely safe Democratic district.
Well, I think the problem that we have in Arizona is so many districts are all one or all the other. They're all Democrat or they're all Republican. The decisions are made, and this is where many independents get cut out. The decisions are made in the primary. And if an independent doesn't vote in the primary, they don't really have a voice in who's going to the legislature to represent their area. We do have an independent redistricting commission that should be balanced carefully with the various interests. The chairman is always an independent, and there are 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. So nobody's ever completely happy, it seems, when the lines are drawn for your legislative district. But the bottom line here is we've adopted in Arizona a nonpartisan way of approaching this, and I think it's a good model. Not perfect, but I think the commission came up with some pretty good answers last time. It's still true that most decisions are made in the primary. Okay, I'd be delighted to go to Tom.
Hi, Terry. My question is about the bifurcated ballot that we have in Arizona, where if you don't provide satisfactory identification that meets the state criteria, you can only vote for federal candidates. What would the role of the Secretary of State's office be to consolidate that?
Well, Tom, first let me remind everybody that all you have to do is push 0 to ask a question. And Tom, the bifurcated or dual ballot is something that actually the Secretary of State, the current Secretary of State, put in place, mandated for the voters of Arizona. And I'm afraid it's going to be confusing. When people get to the ballot, to the polling place on Election Day, the 26th of August or the 4th of November, they're going to find there are 2 lines, one for state electors and one for federal electors. And that's immediately, I think, going to turn a lot of people off. There are not that many that are just federal electors. Usually they are students who were registered using a federal form because they didn't have the paperwork necessary for an Arizona registration. That requires your birth certificate or some other proof that you're a citizen of the United States. And so they use the alternative form, which just requires you to swear that you're a citizen of the United States and therefore legally entitled to vote. What I'm concerned about, and the Secretary of State I think can fix this mess because he created it, is our bottom line is, or my bottom line is, citizens are entitled to vote, non-citizens are not. And so they set up all these sort of obstacles supposedly to determine whether you're a citizen. And I think we need to just cut to the chase and find out, to the maximum degree possible, if the prospective voter is a citizen, they should have every opportunity to vote, and we should make it as easy as possible. If they're not, they don't get even a federal ballot. They shouldn't get a ballot at all. So I really appreciate that question because, and here's my message for folks who are talking, who are on the line, and that is, please don't be confused by this. I'm afraid it was thrown in at the last minute. Many folks don't know about it. They're going to be somewhat turned off, I'm afraid, when they get to the poll and they find that there are these 2 different positions. Many people I've talked to get very anxious, say, well, which list am I on? Well, if you voted in prior elections in Arizona and you're not a recent registrant, I can assure you you're in the state list. You will be able to vote for the whole list of candidates, both federal and state. But if you're a student and a recent registrant, there's a chance that you voted. You're on the federal list. There are less than 1,000 people right now on the federal list in the entire state of Arizona out of almost 3 million voters. So don't be too worried, but it will, I'm afraid, for many people be confusing. And that really gets to one of the main reasons I'm running for Secretary of State, and that is what I mentioned before. I believe a citizen of this country is legally entitled, and one of their most important rights is to be able to vote, and to vote uninhibited. It doesn't matter, in my opinion, whether you're an I, an R, or a D, or any other registration type. You should have an absolutely equal opportunity to a ballot. And unfortunately, right now, in our state and in others across the country, there has been a lot of confusion, and some groups of voters, large groups of voters, have been convinced that they're not welcome, and that this is a process that's too confusing or too threatening or too intimidating for them to be involved in. And I think that's wrong. And I think the Secretary of State, as the Chief Elections Officer, needs to be the drum major, the cheerleader for voting, and to try to get Arizona out of the miserable place it is right now. We're 45th in the nation in terms of voter participation. People just are not involved in the process. I'd like to take the next question now, please.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, yes.
Hi, this is Layla from Phoenix.
Yes, ma'am. Did you have a question?
Something I don't really understand is what exactly the Secretary of State does.
Oh, good. Okay, one answer to that is to go to my website, terrygoddard.com. But let me just go through the high points. Chief Elections Officer basically sets the rules by which the elections are conducted and administers them, made sure that the counts when votes are being tabulated are done fairly and honestly and quickly, something that didn't exactly happen in 2012, and deals with other aspects of elections. And politics. That includes all the contributions that are made to political candidates. That includes the lobbyists that lobby the legislature and their registrations and any gifts they might give to our public elected officials. All that comes through the Secretary of State's office. There are also some important business functions, including any partnerships are registered and any non-real estate secured security interests, an area of importance in commerce. And the so-called Article 9 filings are all done in the Secretary of State's office. It's a variety of functions, but let me just be clear. I think by far the most important is the Chief Elections Officer, the person responsible for making sure that our rules for conducting elections are as clear as possible, and that our elections are secure against any fraud and against anybody trying to vote who's not entitled to, or anybody trying to influence our vote. That should not be there. And that's why I'm so emphatic about dark money, and I'm so pleased that so many folks on this call said emphatically that dark money is a problem in Arizona. You only have to go to this morning's Republic, but it's been in the Star. It's been in many papers around the country, around the state, about how many millions of dollars of dark money, unattributable community political contributions are being lavished on this year's election. Usually negative ads, usually attacks, usually dark and sinister pictures. But the problem is you don't know who's paying for them. You don't know who's arguing that you should vote this way or that way. And you might end up voting for somebody who is being attacked by a group that you do not support, that you don't believe in. We have a lot of allegations here that the Arizona Public Service Company is, in fact, attacking people they don't like who are running for the Corporation Commission, the group that regulates APS. I think folks across the state have a very strong opinion that that's not the way it should be done, that a corporation, at least if they're going to involve themselves in political speech and advertising, should come out of the closet, should be clear about their interests, and therefore voters can judge. This is somebody I support because this company is behind them, or I don't support them precisely for the same reason because this company is behind them, or is it, this is I think at the essence of our democracy, and that's why no less an authority than Justice Scalia, when writing for the Supreme Court, said that he didn't want to live in a country where political speech was secret, where the people that were making political arguments were able to remain unknown. And I believe in transparency. I believe the Secretary of State needs to stand up, and this I'll answer your question finally by this, stand up and say, in Arizona we don't believe in secrecy, we believe in transparency. In Arizona we believe that everybody involved in the political debate should do it out in the open and make their comments attributable to them so that we don't have any of these surrogates or these secret activities going on. Anyway, could I go to Sylvia in Green Valley?
Yes. A couple of years ago, I registered independent, and not shortly after that, I received a notice from the governing office telling me that I was not going to be able to vote if I didn't choose one of the major parties. Why was that?
Well, that's wrong, and that kind of confusion I really deplore. You don't have to vote with a major party. You can be, and most the great many of your fellow Arizonans have decided to be independent. They're not in a party, and so the one thing that you would have to do to vote in a primary is to choose a Democrat, a Republican, or a Libertarian ballot. So you vote with their ballot, but you don't become a member of their party. I think there's a lot of confusion. I'm glad you brought up that question because I think many independents don't understand that very, very clearly. You can, without changing your registration, you can take a ballot either at the polling place on Election Day, August 26th, show up, say, I want to take a Republican ballot, or I want to take a Democratic ballot, or I want to take a Libertarian ballot, but you don't become a Libertarian or a Democrat or Republican. You just vote for the people in their primary. Is that clear? I hope so, because that's something I find many, many people simply do not understand. Okay, Fred, excuse me, who have we got here? I'm trying to read my script. Mo in Tucson.
Terry,
Hello?
good evening.
Yes,
I remember you from the 80s when you went up against Mayor Hance and took away at-large city council voting. I still remember you for doing that district-wide initiative, and I think it's worked out well. That's the first time I remember you doing something of import. I've had dinner with you at different events in Tucson, and I have a couple of questions that I know you'll be honest and shoot from the hip. I know you don't like the bifurcated ballot that Secretary of State Bennett did. Because we're all independents on this call, or most of us, we like to pick the best person, not the best party necessarily. I personally think you probably are the best for that position. But my question is, how would you have done this?
The bifurcated ballot?
If you were Ken Bennett?
Well, he didn't
have. I understand you probably wouldn't have done it, but what?
I think that's a great question, and I would not have taken the distinct minority view, which is what Secretary Bennett has done. In other words, there are only 2 states in the nation that have adopted. There are many of them that have the same identification requirements that we do. To be able to register to vote, you have to prove that you're a citizen of the United States, and you have to show documentary evidence to prove that. I support that. As AG, I was one of I carried that item through the courts, defending it. But here's the thing: I don't think you have to set up this very elaborate new system, brand new system of dividing our voters into 2 categories in order to carry forward with what is basically an effort to say citizens vote, non-citizens don't. That's the principle. That's what we need to stand up and defend, and that's what I will stand up and defend. So I believe what we could have done very simply is what many of your recorders, including you're in Tucson, Fan Rodriguez, has been one of the top people in looking to see if there are other ways to show that somebody's a citizen. And if, for example, they have an Arizona driver's license, bingo, they're put on the state list. They don't have to show any more identification because in order to get the driver's license, they had to show they were a citizen. There are other indicators in the data bank, federal and state, which can help to show that you are truly registered and able to vote as a citizen of the United States. I want to use those to the maximum degree possible. And if somebody can't prove that, then they shouldn't be registered at all. So let's not make life difficult for people who are legal voters, citizens of the United States. And that, unfortunately, is what the dual track has done. And I don't believe we had to go that way, and I think it was a mistake to go in that direction. Could I go to William in Tucson? William?
Hi, Terry. This is Will Johnson.
How are you?
My question to you is there a way or a part of the system wherein we can vote like an up or down vote to each bill that comes into, say, the House and the Senate, as to give a public instruction of what the public sees in value to the vote that is taken by our representatives? I don't know if it would be valid, determining which vote they take, but it would give a instructional value to the representatives of what the people are thinking.
That's a fascinating idea. You're really talking about a straw poll or a plebiscite on each issue. And we have something like that now. I mean, email and some of the digital enhancements that we have today are seen by our legislators. They pay attention to them. So that's one way you can register your like or dislike of a bill. But in Arizona, we also have a constitutional right to take a bill we don't like and do what we call refer it to the voters. We can sign a certain number of signatures on a petition, and then that will go on the ballot, yes or no, at the next election. That was done just recently by outraged voters in Arizona who didn't like a program passed by the legislature, signed by the governor, called 2305. That was a bill that basically restricted voter rights. And in the case, if you're a libertarian, I don't know if there are any libertarians on the call right now, we didn't ask, but it increased the number of signatures you had to have to run for office by thousands of percent. It was just unbelievably restrictive. Voters in Arizona really didn't like that bill, and 150,000 people signed a petition to put it on the ballot. And you know what the legislature did? They immediately repealed it. So they heard you, but I think they did the wrong thing because they were so afraid that the voters of Arizona would vote on that proposition. So one last time, let me remind you that if you just push 0, you can participate, and we'll take just a couple more calls and then wrap it up and thank everyone for participating in this teletown hall. Let me go to Darlene in Tucson.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
This is Darlene.
Yes, please. You have a question.
Yes, I do. I'm an independent voter, and I'm registered that way. But I have a problem this year because I want to cross party lines. And it seems to me that if we can do that in the general election, why are we not allowed to do that in the primary?
Okay, good question. In the primary, you have the right to take a ballot from one of the other parties, but not both. And that's the law in Arizona today, and it's not what we call an open primary. It is one where you basically have to take a all-Republican, all-Democrat, or all-Libertarian set of candidates. Now, there is an option. There is an alternative, and I'm going to do another town hall on Wednesday. Also, it'll be statewide, and you can go on my website and get a number to participate if you're interested, because Paul Johnson is going to be on that call. And Paul is the leader of an independent movement. He is a registered independent, and he wants to put on the ballot, again, a proposal for a top 2 primary. Now, if we have a top 2 primary, it means every voter gets to vote for every candidate in the primary. And it doesn't matter whether you're a libertarian, independent, or a lettuce stealer. I mean, everybody gets to play, and the two top contestants, whether they could both be of the same party, will then be in the runoff in the general election. It's been done in California. It's been done in a number of states. It seems to increase participation, and it certainly gets us away from the problem that you were questioning about, is why do I have to go with just one party if I'm an independent? So Paul's going to be talking about that. It will be on the ballot. It was on in 2012, and it was defeated. Let me get back to my cardinal point here. It was defeated by several $1 million of dark money that came in at the last minute and unfortunately persuaded people not to vote for the top 2 primary. I'm personally supportive of it. I think it would make a big difference in our state. Vicki in Tucson, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. Hi, Terry. My name is Victoria in Tucson. I have a question for you. Ever since I've been a young lady, I voted independently. I never declared a party. Well, this year, I don't know how this happened, but I got a Republican primary ballot, and I did not request one.
In the mail?
Yes,
obviously,
sir.
in the mail. And you did not request one. And
I
what did you, 2 years ago, what was your mail ballot?
The regular election, where we were supposed to vote for, who was running at the time, and never ever received a primary ballot before, and this year I received it, and it was for the Republican Party. It's still on my desk.
Well,
and
I have a little advice. If you plan to vote, for instance, in the Democratic, and you've got the right to go either way, but the fact that you've gotten a mail Republican ballot, we need to get to the bottom of this, because A, without requesting it, you shouldn't have gotten it. And now we've got a problem, because you have a Republican ballot, and if you want to vote a Republican ballot, go ahead. You've still got some time to mail it in. If you want to vote a Democratic ballot, now we have an issue, because you've got to turn in the Republican ballot and get a Democratic ballot. Now, the way I would do that is to go, if you can, on Election Day to your polling place, explain the problem, and then you have a right to vote either party. But that's a very difficult question, and there's no way that, as I understand the procedures, you could have gotten a ballot that you did not request. So let me go to our last question. Barbara Levy in Tucson.
Yes. Yes, sir. I am so excited about this call, and I feel that so many of the other people that are running for office, you pick up the phone 100 times a day, and there's a recording that really says nothing. Just vote for me. Like, who are you? But you've done it in such a personal way, and I love the things you've said, and I definitely will vote for you.
Well, bless you. Thank you very much. That leaves me on a high.
I'm glad.
And I greatly appreciate it. That was my intention. I apologize to folks that we did use one of those automatic calls to invite you to participate, but I couldn't think of any other or better way to make sure that we got as many interested folks as possible on the call. And I'm just terribly grateful that so many interested voters have been there, that so many of you are independents, because believe me, I think the future of our state is in the hands of independent voters. Their participation in this coming election, both primary on the 26th and general on the 4th of November, is absolutely critical, I think, to restoring Arizona to the great state I know it is. And we've gotten a little off track, and I think we've got the chance to come back. But it'll only be because independents, like yourselves, vote much, much more enthusiastically. And just one last request, if you care about what we said about dark money, I have a petition. I'm trying to get as many signatures. We've got several thousand now that have signed up saying they want to stop dark money in Arizona. That's what I would love to be entitled and empowered to do as your Secretary of State. It's an incredibly important issue, and I would very much appreciate folks going to that website, terrygoddard.com, and signing the petition. Let's put an end to dark money in Arizona. It's a cowardly, deceptive, and totally undemocratic in the small d way to conduct business, and it's very damaging to our democracy. Thanks, everybody, for being part of this call. I'd like to turn the call over to Adam Kinsey right now for a couple of final remarks and housekeeping. If you could stay with us for just another 30 seconds. Thank you again for being with us this evening.
Thanks again for joining Terry for this important town hall, folks. Just a couple of items. If you didn't get to ask Terry a question, would like to make sure that he does receive the question, stay on the line. You'll be prompted after we end the call to give us your question, and we can make sure that we get it to Terry, and we'll get you an answer. Also, again, all this information can be found at terrygoddard.com, including ways you can plug in and connect to Terry and the Secretary of State campaign. That's also where the petition to stop dark money is. You can like us on Facebook, follow at Terry Goddard AZ on Twitter, and we will be having another statewide teletown hall on Wednesday, and all of the call-in information will be found there. So thank you again so much for joining us. We hope to hear from you soon.